last chance I'll get to say this, but welcome back, everybody. So Unit 12 is surface area and volume. So pretty much the same learning targets here. Learn how to calculate surface area and volume for various shapes, choose the right formula, things like that. Learn the difference between surface area and volume. So those are really the only key vocab words there. So as we move along, let me actually make this bigger here. Let's see here. So surface area, volume. Surface area is the total area of all the faces that make up a 3D shape. So if we think about a rectangular prism, there are 6 of them, like a dice. Okay, so it's really, when I think about it, I think of wrapping paper, how much paint you would need, things like that. Whereas volume is how much space inside of the shape there is. Now, when we talk about these, we're talking about 3-dimensional shapes now. The last unit was about 2-dimensional shapes, area and perimeter. But surface area and volume are always going to be 3-dimensional shapes, which is really most of our things in the real life. Other than drawing things on paper, everything is 3-dimensional. We have a length, a width, and a height. So I took these off the formula sheet. You can see the different formulas here. Some of these can definitely get a little bit tricky, like the pyramid one, because it says area of the base, number of sides. We may go over some of those, but if you ever have any questions, you can certainly look up. There are some different ways to write some of these formulas as well, and we may be referencing some of these as we go through some problems. Now you have to be very careful with surface area, because sometimes, like with the perimeter, we took some things out. Surface area may be the same thing. Now my drawings are very, very terrible here, but let's say I have a cube. Okay. So it looks something like this, whatever. But then, like, on top of that, maybe I have a cylinder of some type. And again, please excuse my drawings. The top of, or the bottom of that cylinder is not actually part of our surface. The top of that square or cube that the cylinder sits on is not part of our surface. So if we were to paint this, we would not like be painting in here. So that's where we have to be careful. So let's just practice some. So this is a rectangular prism with a cylinder hole. So let's start with volume. Volume for this one is usually a little bit more of the straightforward one. So volume of the rectangular prism is going to be length times width times height, and you can see that on your formula sheet. Okay, so in this case, our length would be 11, our width would be 7, and our height would be 9. So I should be able to figure that out fairly easily here. Just 11 times 7 times 9, that gives me 83. The volume for the cylinder is pi times r squared, which is 3, times the height. Now, the height of this is really the length in this case, because it's kind of how many times that circle is stacked over and over again. So that would be 11. So the formula is pi r squared h. So pi, and I don't know what happened up here, but that wasn't 83. I'm not sure what happened. That was 693. So if you're wondering if I'm crazy, the answer is yes. So the cylinder is pi times 3 squared times 11, which is about 311 point, really just 311. Now, because this is a hole, I think to find the total volume, I need to do the prism minus the cylinder. So 693 minus 311 is 382. And I don't know what my units are, but volume is always units cubed because we take into account all 3 dimensions. Now for surface area, this one can get a little tricky. So the surface area of the rectangular prism first is 2WL plus 2WH plus 2LH. And that might be in a little different order than the formula sheet. I apologize if it is. But it's going to give you the same thing. So 2 times 7 times 11 plus 2 times 7 times 9 plus 2 times 9 times 11. Okay, so that would be 2 times 7 times 11 plus 2 times 7 times 9 plus 2 times 9 times 11. That's 478. Now the cylinder formula is 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. So that'd be 2 times pi times 3 squared plus 2 times pi times 3 times 11. So 2 times pi times 3 squared plus 2 times pi times 3 times 11. That is 263.9. But let's think about this. So this is a hole, right? But I don't have this circle kind of, let me use blue. This circle here and here and this circle over here are not actually part of my surface. So when I add these two up to find the total surface area, I actually have to subtract the area of that circle, and the area of the circle is pi times 3 squared. I have to subtract it 4 times because I'm not counting it on either end of the cylinder, but I also have to subtract it from the area of the ends of the rectangular prism. So this has to be subtracted twice on this side. This has to be subtracted twice on that side because I need to subtract it from both things. So if I do 478 plus 263.9 minus 4 times pi times 3 squared, I should get 628.8, and that would be units squared because we're still talking about area just like the last unit. All right, let's save that one. You guys can do that one. This one is pretty much like the other one. Well, okay, we'll do this one. So for this one, I have a rectangular prism and I have a cylinder on top of it. So let's start with volume. Volume of the rectangular prism would be length times width times height. So that would be that. Volume of the cylinder would be pi times r squared times h. So if I plug both of those into my calculator, 40 times 25 times 10, I get 10,000. If I plug pi times 5 squared times 10 into my calculator, I get 785.4. So if I add those up, I get 10,785.4 centimeters cubed. For surface area, the surface area of the rectangular prism is going to be 2 times 40 times 25 plus 2 times 40 times 10. As I'm doing this, I'll finish it and then I'll explain it. Really, all these formulas are doing is finding the area of each individual face. So for instance, I have 2 rectangles in the front and the back that are 40 centimeters by 10 centimeters. To find the area of a rectangle, it's just length times width. Since I have 2 of those, that's where the 2 comes in. So that's that formula kind of broken down. So you can always just kind of think about this as what shapes are my faces and what are the area formulas for those shapes. So I got 3,300 for this one. Now I need to do the surface area of the cylinder. So 2 times pi times r squared plus 2 times pi times r times h. Okay, so that would be, I believe, 471.2. So I'm going to add these up, but then I have to stop and just think about what isn't part of my surface. And I think it's the bottom of this cylinder and the same on the top of the rectangular prism that's covered up by that cylinder. So I need to subtract 2 circles that would both have an area pi times 5 squared. So I do 3,300 plus 471.2 minus 2 times pi times 5 squared. That should give me 3,614.1 centimeters squared. Now, if you're using 3.14, your answers may change a little bit. I'm using the pi button. All right, moving on. So this one can be a little tricky here, but let's do the volume of the rectangular prism first. So that would be 10 times 10 times 32. So 10 times 10 times 32 is 3,200. Now, if I go back and look at the formula for the volume of a square pyramid, volume of a square pyramid, it can look a little tricky. So it's 1/3 times the area of the base. The area of my base is a square. So the area of a square is just 10 times 10. And then times the height. But I don't actually know what this is right here. I would know that since that goes to the middle, this would be 5. So I need to do Pythagorean theorem, which I know you all love. And I'm calling that h, but it's not my hypotenuse, it's my height. So I would do 5 squared plus h squared equals 12 squared. So when I do that, I get approximately 10.9. So that would be my height. So I figure 1/3 times 10 times 10 times 10.9. That gives me 363.9. So if I add these two things up, I get 3,563.9 feet cubed. Okay, if I go to surface area, I have the rectangular prism here. So that would be 2 times 10 times 10 plus 2 times 10 times 32 plus 2 times 10 times 32. Okay, so 2 times 10 times 10 plus 2 times 10 times 32 plus 2 times 10 times 32. 1480. Now, for the triangle, I am not going to use the formula. Okay, because I'm just going to, I know I have 4 triangles showing there. That's my faces. So what I'm going to do is just do 4 times, and the area of each of those triangles would be 1/2 times the base, which would be 10, times the height, which is 12, it says here. So I'm just going to do it like that. So that would be 240. Now I do think when I add these up, I did count something that wasn't part of my surface. I counted this rectangle on top, or the square on top, or the rectangular prism. That wasn't actually part of my surface. So I need to subtract a 10 times 10. I need to subtract the area of that. So 1480 plus 240 minus 10 times 10 is 1620 feet squared. All right. Last one, and I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly, but Yana celebrated her 5th birthday. She ate her favorite restaurant. She ordered a soda pop. The soda pop came in a cup shaped like a cylinder with a cone on top. The cylinder, so let's try to draw that as best as I can. Something like that. Okay. The cylinder part of the cup was 6 inches tall, and the height of the top was 2 inches. The radius of the cup was 2 inches, so that would be for both the cylinder and the cone. What is the surface area? Okay, so my cylinder would be 2 times pi times 2 squared plus 2 times pi times 2 times 6. My cone formula is 1/3. Oh, nope. My cone formula for surface area is much trickier than that, isn't it? So it's pi times the radius squared plus pi times the radius times the square root of the radius squared plus the height squared. The height and the radius were both 2. So let me figure out the first part there. 2 times pi times 2 squared plus 2 times pi times 2 times 6. I'll get 100.5. Now for the bottom part, I'm going to do this in stages. So the first thing I'm going to do is 2 squared times pi. That's 12.6. And then I'm going to do 2 times pi. That's 6.3. And then I'm going to do 2 squared plus 2 squared, which would be 8. So I don't want to add before I do anything. I need to finish this over here, order of operations. So the square root of 8 is 2.8. So now I'm going to do 6.3 times 2.8. So I'm going in order here. I can't add before I multiply. So 6.3 times 2.8 is 17.64. And then I can add those. 12.6 plus 17, and I should have just called that 17.6. 1 decimal is fine. That's 30.2. So I need to add those up. Okay, but now I need to subtract the bottom of the cone and the top of the cylinder. So I need to subtract 2. I have 2 circles that are both pi times 2 squared, the areas of them. So I'm going to do 100.5 plus 30.2 minus 2 times pi times 2 squared. And that gives me 105.6. So that would be my surface area, and that was all in inches. It's surface area, so it's inches squared. So I know this can get confusing. As always, if you have questions, come in person, email, look up other things if you need to. People may explain it a little better than I do. But good luck, and I'll be back with you for your individual answers.